Hi, I'm Stephen Barclay, Director of Global Business at Flyntrok Consulting. For over 25 years, I've been working with values and how they influence our lives. In this Our Insight series on working with values, I bring you conversations on values with thought leaders from around the world. Let's dive in for our conversation. Welcome once again to our series on working with values, and it's my great pleasure to introduce one of the foremost thinkers on values in the world, Richard Barrett. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Lovely to be with you down under,
Yeah,
as we
great.
say, and I'm up above. I don't know what that means, but let's not get hierarchical about it, okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, your history and your background is amazing. Richard is the founder of the Barrett Values Centre. And when you speak about values to people, many people will know about the existence of this organisation and its contribution. He's also the founder and managing director of the Barrett Academy for Advancement of Human Values. He's a founder and ambassador for the Human Awareness Initiative. He's the author of about 11 books, and he's had a musical written about him based on one of his books, What My Soul Told Me.
Stephen, the musical wasn't about me. It was a made-up story, but the musical is based on my book, What My Soul Told Me, Ego Soul Dynamics.
Great. And what was it like to witness that show?
Pretty amazing. It was something that was not on my bucket list that came up because of my friend Jack, who's an amazing musical creator, and he and I became really good pals. And we said, why don't we do a musical? And he said, yeah, let's base it on your book, What My Soul Told Me, and let's make it about ego soul dynamics and make it into something that people could get, people could really understand. And so most of the work was done by Jack, but he was kind of inspired by, well, I worked with him on it. At one point, we went off to Italy for a week to actually draw up the plot of the whole thing. And Jack took it from there. So he's the man, and he lives in Brisbane, by the way.
Yeah. I'm close to Jack, and yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, that the power of music and the power of the show to tell your story or tell your knowledge and wisdom in a different way. What was it like to be a witness once you saw the whole production?
Yeah. We put it on during a lull in COVID in the suburbs of London. So it was only on for about 6 weeks, but it was pretty amazing, really, and people really, really enjoyed the musical, I have to say, and it just puts a whole new dimension to the sort of work that we do on values. But in this particular musical, we go beyond values because we go down to the root of values, and that's what I call the ego soul dynamics. The ego has its fears, which influence our needs, and then the soul has its desires, which sometimes which are often in conflict with the ego, and that ego soul dynamic is what actually creates all of the stress and difficulties in our lives. The prisons are full of people who haven't managed to reconcile their ego needs with their soul desires. They're probably not even aware of their soul desires. But anyhow, enough on that. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that, but yeah, it was pretty amazing, and the music is absolutely fantastic. Jack did such a great job on that. Anyhow, and so did the scriptwriter, by the way. I forgot to mention him, but he did it wonderful. It took Jack and I, the plot that Jack and I put together, and he put words to it, and it was a great collaboration.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, thanks. And I'm thinking about my own experience in facilitating conversations around values over the last 25 years, and probably facilitated well over 100. And what I notice when I'm facilitating those conversations and helping individuals explore their values individually and collectively, and almost all of the time you notice a change in the atmosphere in the room. There's something going on. What's all that about? What are values? What is that energy that one experiences when you're having this conversation around values?
Well, our values express our deepest aspirations and our deepest feelings, and so you're tapping into actually the soul level of the individual when you start talking about values, because beliefs, we either make decisions based on beliefs or we make decisions based on our values. And values really get to the heart, it literally get to the heart of who you are. What do you stand for? If I was to ask you, what are your top 3 values? I could tell a lot about your life and what happened to you in the past and where you want to go. And so you're entering, when people talk about the values, they're shifting from this transactional conversation to an emotional conversation. And that is what you're tapping into. You're tapping into the deepest emotions of people. And you say, oh, talk for 5 minutes about your values with this person. And it's, 2.5 minutes each. Well, it's really hard to stop them after 5 minutes, because they just want to go on and on and on, because they're having a deep conversation, and they're meeting people at the soul level. That's the way I see it.
So what's the value of organizations providing the space for these types of conversations? Because as you said, it's taking it from a transactional conversation to an emotional conversation. What is the value?
Okay, so the value is authenticity. The value is connection. So I teach people in organizations how to have value-based conversations and how to develop values-based decision-making. Now, in values-based decision-making, you can't help but having an honest, open communication, authentic communication. And of course, so much of what happens in organizations is driven by fear. And so things don't get said that should be said. Things get assumed that shouldn't be assumed. And so it's like you're working in an environment which is just full of masks. Everybody's wearing a mask in order to get their needs met. And nobody's authentic and honest. And, it's not only stressful keeping up that mask, but it's also debilitating. And people, when the culture is such that it's driven by fear, people get stressed, and then they won't stay and they won't perform, and they look forward to getting out of the door in the afternoon and going home, where they can be themselves, because they go to work and put on a mask, come home, take off the mask, hopefully, but hopefully they take it off. But that is stressful at the deepest level, because you're not being authentic, you're not expressing who you are at the soul level, and so that you get into this disequilibrium inside you that people feel when they're not able to talk about the values, and they're not able to be authentic and honest and open and have frank conversations.
So what does a values-based conversation look like? Say, I'm an organization, I've got 40 employees, I'm the CEO of this organization. How can I integrate? What does it look like in a day-to-day business, or what does it look like in a meeting, or what does it look like in a week?
Well, I've got 3 or 4 answers to that question, not about what it looks like, but how you can do that. The first thing to do is if you're in a team or even an organization, is to have a values assessment. In other words, what are my values? What values do I see in the organization? What values would I like to see in the organization? And that is what I'm known for, because I invented that 25 years ago, and it's being used in thousands of companies all over the world. And so doing a cultural values assessment. Now, already, if the leadership team is willing to do that, then that's the first step. If they're not willing to do it, then, you know, you can write that off, because that opens the door to the conversation about values. Once you get the results, you'll see to what level is the cultural entropy. What is cultural entropy? It's the degree of dysfunction in the system due to fear-based behaviors, beliefs, and values. And anything below 10% is cultural entropy is good, but most companies don't achieve that. They're up in the 20s and 30s. And so the idea then is to implement actions that allow you to become value-based, and watch every year as you redo the values assessment, watch the level of cultural entropy go down. Well, what happens when that happens is people feel like they can bring their whole selves to work. They become more productive, more efficient, and the company does better and better. So a company with high cultural entropy, if it maintains over a long time, will have a high turnover of staff and will eventually fail. So the idea is to have a values alignment, low cultural entropy, and you're not going to get this low cultural entropy unless you tackle the issues that come up in the values assessment. So let's say you do the values assessment and you find out bureaucracy is the #1 value. Well, the antidote to the bureaucracy is accountability. So once you've got the survey results, you can build a program to build accountability and get rid of bureaucracy. Or if one of the words that comes up is blame, and these are all fear-driven values, by the way, blame, then you devise a program to arrest that blame. Now, one of the things you can do, and it's in my book, The Values-Driven Organization, Appendix 6, is you can do, I highly recommend this exercise. It doesn't take long. It takes about 2 hours with the team, is that you have a trust matrix. There are 12 values that lead to trust. So trust is an end value, and there are the 12 values that build to trust. And so you ask the team, you give the team, each person of the team, 5 red dots and 5 green dots, and you say, place your green dots on these 12 values which you're good at, or the team is good at, and place the red dots on 5 values that you're not so good at, or the team is not so good at. And when you put the values, you've got the big chart on the wall with these 12 words, and you put the stickers. You have to say why you're putting the green dots and why you're putting the red dots. And if you've got a team of 12, it probably takes 25 minutes. And immediately you've got a really deep diagnostic of what's working and not working in terms of trust, because trust is the key. And I did that about 3 weeks ago with a company leadership team, and it was really terrific, because usually the red dots go on what is known as the relationship side, and the green dots tend to go on the performance side, getting results, et cetera, et cetera. But this particular team was the other way around. And there was a particular reason for that, which I won't go into right now, but they were strong on the culture side, but they didn't have that performance side because, well, there are several reasons because of that. And as I said, I'm not going to go into that. But so immediately they've opened the door to a new conversation. And so once people have seen the result, then you ask them, well, okay, if this is where we are, what are you personally going to do? Which 3 values are you personally going to work on to correct the situation? And then they have to stand up and say that. Not only do that, they write on a little piece of paper, I commit to working on these values. And then you collect those, and then the next meeting you hand out, the commitment paper and say, well, what have you done? That's one thing. Another thing is very useful tool is what I call circle time and
what do you call it?
Time. Circle time.
Circle time.
Okay. So generally speaking, in meetings of a team, There are people who have strong views and people who don't speak up. And so circle time is absolutely designed to have everybody speak up. And I actually learned this in Sweden 15 years ago. So what happens is that certain people dominate the conversation, and those who didn't feel strong enough to speak up, leave the meeting frustrated. And so circle time is this, you've got a topic you want to talk about, and everybody, you go round the room, everybody has to either speak about it or pass. So they give their opinion. And then once you've been around the room, you go around the room again. So that if you heard something that somebody else said that you like, you can say that. So what this improves listening, because you're going to get a chance or 2 chances or 3 chances to actually speak up. So you actually listen to what other people are doing. What happens generally in meetings is you've got a point of view. You don't really listen to the other people because you're so intent on getting your point of view across. So it cuts out all of that. So the first time round, you had your say, or you passed, and everybody else has had their say. Then you go around again, and you see whether people change their view. Earlier on, you said, you said to me, my point of view on values has been changing as I've been having these meetings, and so this is exactly what happens in a meeting. And so you go around again, and you can go around again. And generally, what happens then after 2 or 3 rounds is that everybody comes to an agreement on what it is, their position with regard to this particular topic, or you get 2 extreme points of view. And at least what you've done is you've found the conflict, you've found the key issue. And so the trust matrix, I think, is a fantastic tool for having frank, open communications about how you feel about what's going on in the company or the team.
Yeah, great. And for a leader that's sort of embarking on this, what are the characteristics that leader has to develop to be able to guide the organization through this process? Because you, in your one of your books, everything I know about values, everything I've learned about values. Learned about values. You talk about the evolutionary leader and the 5 competencies. So I imagine that that there has to be some development of that leader who's going through that. Brilliant. Yep. Everything I've learned about values. So what are the competencies, characteristics that a leader needs to develop in themselves to be able to guide an organization through this process?
Well, 2 main ones. 1, freedom from fear.
Mm-hmm.
Point 2, authenticity. If you can't be authentic, well, if you're not free from fear, you can't be authentic. These 2 are very dependent. And then come a whole series of values of the leader. First of all, kindness. Secondly, caring about the well-being of the people. On our fellowship program, where we take people on a 2-year journey into everything I've ever written, we had somebody who came on that. It was actually not on that particular. It was on this 4-day workshop that I do. This person is a young woman who has been given a high-ranking position in the company simply because she had these skills. She cared about her people, and therefore her people were highly productive. She would talk to them on a regular basis, individually, about their fears, about what was going on in their life, and she would do things to alleviate that. So she alleviated the stress, and she gave them the opportunity to talk about what was not working for them. And, she got this job because of that. And it was a young woman in a very male-driven large company. And hats off to her. But what she did was she became a role model for caring.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually is what leadership is about. I mean, there's so much written about leadership. I mean, there's so much rubbish. Actually, I think we should eliminate the word leadership from the vocabulary, because it's not about leadership, it's about personal growth. I mean, you feel close to a leader who exhibits human values. So it's not about leadership, it's about being the best version of who you can be in a collective context. So I'm not a big fan of the word leadership. I think it's rubbish. I really honestly think we should eliminate the idea of leadership and replace it with the whole idea of personal growth, because these are the leaders of the future, the ones who understand how to care about the needs of their people. So, yeah, I mean, vision is important, other things are important, but the key is caring about your people.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And in one of those competencies, you talked about freedom from fear. What I heard you saying was that the individual freedom from fear, but also having conversations with others to hear their fears and addressing those fears. So it's got two components to it. It's about self and fear for others.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about creating an environment which is fearless.
Fearless. Yeah. Nice.
Fearless in the sense of being, yes, let's do it, and yes, you can speak up and say exactly what's on your mind and be honest and open with me, because I can take it. You know, if you've got feedback for me which would seem to be less than complimentary, I want to hear about it. Now, how many leaders want to hear about that? Because they're not interested in being authentic. Yeah, I want to hear. If you've got a problem with me, I want to hear about it. But how many leaders say that? Very few.
And what thanks. What role does vulnerability play in that? Because
huge. I'll tell you, it's a huge component. Sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. It's a huge component in authenticity. So you can't be authentic without being vulnerable. Now, vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness. This is again, you've got the wrong end of the stick. Vulnerability is a huge strength. It's not a weakness at all. And those in power would have you believe that vulnerability is a weakness. It's rubbish again.
If I am a leader and I'm slowly developing this capacity of vulnerability, and for whatever reasons I may not have been comfortable to do it in the past, what are the things that I can do for myself to gradually be more vulnerable? How can I make that easier for myself?
Well, you can't make it easy for yourself, but you can accelerate that by always asking for personal feedback.
Okay.
Feedback. See, feedback is the key, because okay, you might laugh at this one, but what are the words that every man hates to hear from his wife? I'll give you the answer. Darling, we need to talk. Because they know they're going to get feedback, and it's probably not going to be that complimentary. And the issue there is fear. Again, fear. And so the important thing is to put people at ease and say, look, I can only grow if you can give me feedback. And it may be painful, but you see, pain is positive. Now, that might sound strange. Pain is positive, but pain is positive because it points exactly at what you need to work on in an emotional setting in order to become more vulnerable and more authentic. The pain comes from the lack of authenticity or lack of alignment between ego and soul. So You want to know that if you want to grow and develop. You absolutely want to know. You want to have that pain. Now, pain in the body is slightly different, but again, it's positive. So, okay, I've got a pain in my knee. Okay, I go to the hospital, and I say my leg hurts, and the doctor says, "Well, yeah, I can't work with that. Where's the pain? Oh, it's in my knee." Okay, now the doctor knows exactly what to look at in order to correct the situation. It was the same with emotional pain. If you can't name the emotional pain, which always comes from fear, by the way, if you can't name, I'm not loved enough, I don't have enough, any pain that comes from the sources of not having enough or being enough, is you need to know about it. And usually this pain comes from childhood, when your childhood experiences, which you have been so deeply embedded in your mind and still dominate your life. And in fact, most of our issues, practically all our issues, come from our childhood. And so this goes back to education, and which are really important for children to be values-based education, to be able to talk about what they're feeling. That's the key. Feeling is the direct pathway from where you are to your soul, because the feeling comes from the dichotomy between the fears of the ego and the love of the soul. That's where you need to solve your issues. And if you don't, you'll just go on repeating the same old stuff, bad behavior, and you get the same result. So, yeah, the key is personal development, and the key is releasing fear and embracing love. And if you're stuck in a situation you don't know what to do, there's only one question to ask, and that is, what would love have me do in this situation?
Wow, fantastic. Now,
yeah, you know, I've been working with this team and for a few months now, and we kind of did a round robin of where we got to, and one of the most how shall I put, transactional people said, the thing I've learned, and I can't believe I'm saying this, is I've learned to ask myself, what would love have me do in this situation? And everybody in the room laughed because it was so unlike him. But you know what? What would love have me do in this situation? And it applies at home as well as work.
I hear what you're saying, that organizational transformation is so linked to personal transformation.
Correct.
From your years of working in this field, what have you witnessed in terms of the change towards the understanding of the need for personal transformation? Are we any closer than how closer are we to it compared to, say, 20 years ago?
Definitely. When I started over 25 years ago, we're a lot closer, but still a long way to go. And organizational transformation begins with the personal transformation of the leaders. The culture is a reflection of their consciousness. And that message has been, it's been my lifelong message. It's been my message for the last 30 years. And it's, it's reaching a lot of people now, because they're creating better cultures, they're creating more meaningful organizations, and they're being more successful organizations, because they are focusing on the key ingredient, which is culture. And the key ingredient in the culture is values. What are your values? Are you living your values? What are the behaviors associated with your values? How do you exemplify? How do you increase these positive behaviors which are linked to these positive values?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the answer is that things are changing, fortunately, and 25 years ago, I was a bit of an isolated lone voice in the wilderness, saying, you've got to build a value-driven organization. And my second book actually was called Liberating the Corporate Soul. It sold really well, even with the word soul in the title, but it was all about values. And, you know, the third edition of that is the values-driven organization, which has as I mentioned, many appendices which help you to, you know, like 15, 18 appendices, which help you to really detail what to do if you're an organization or a leader or a team leader, or whatever you are, to help create a better culture, which is more successful and creates a level of happiness and well-being. Let's talk about well-being in the organization.
You talked a little while back about values-based decision making, and you talked about, you know, the importance of people doing a values assessment and doing the trust matrix, etc. And say that they've done some work on that. And what does value-based decision look like, say, in making a decision about tendering?
Okay, all right. Okay, fine. Okay, well, I had an example just a couple of weeks ago with the team I'm working with. So we were doing this workshop, and I said, I want to pick an issue that you have right now, okay, that you're facing as a team. And now let's sit down and say, what value do you want to express in the decision that you want to make? What value wants to guide the decision making? So they talked about it, and they came up with the answer: transparency. And it, you know, without that conversation, they would never have got there. But they realized that the key to this problem was transparency. So it's just like saying, okay, we have to make a decision about this. What is the value that we think is most important in order to regulate the situation? I mean, it's that easy. Just need somebody to say, okay, let's talk about what value do we want to bring to this situation. Like, you know, and that's why I come back to it on a personal level. You know, it's like, what would love have me do? That's the question that you need to ask, really. Now, you can bring that question into business, but, you know, it's usually more transactional or more, actually, it's like the transparency, openness, creativity, or these are the values that we want to bring to this situation in order to regulate it.
Mm. My friend Mary Gentili calls this exercising the values muscle. And so what you're suggesting is that there's lots of small things that you can do in an organization to keep developing the values muscle. And you've talked about the assessment, you've talked about the values-based decision making. What else can organizations do on a day-to-day basis around developing that values muscle?
Well, I have a new idea, which I only had about 6 months ago. Well, you know, you go to organizations and they have the values written up on a poster on the wall, you know, that's fine. Often doesn't mean much, because really what you're really focusing on, you need to focus on, is the behaviors. What are the behaviors? Because, you know, it's difficult to say, oh, look, I can see he's expressing that value, but actually what you see is a behavior that leads to the value. So behaviors are key. Now, I don't know whether you know this, but last May, I decided to become an artist, a painter, professional painter. And I have, I'm advanced very quickly. I set the intention of being the best painter I could be. And already I'm selling my paintings. And I'm focusing on 2 or 3 things, but one of them is portraits, and another is what I call company portraits or values portraits, so that an organization has a mission or values, and they say to me, can you express that in a painting? And I say, yeah. So then I do a painting that expresses the values and the mission of the organization, usually quite a large painting, which can go in the boardroom, but you can also make, you know, small impressions of that, like postcard size, that everybody can carry about, and they can hand to people and say, you know, this is who we are. And they say, well, what does this mean? And then they talk about the value, the sense of mission in the painting. So I've done one of these for a company in Indonesia. I've got another couple of companies who I'm talking to about that. And it's really it gets past this, you know, values on the wall that don't mean anything, because a painting can actually mean quite a lot. As long as you understand that, you can, it begins to speak to you, and it speaks in slightly different ways to slightly different people. So as an artist, I've learned that I can do a painting and I can ask people, well, what do you see in this painting? And so there'll be a common core, but there will also be a lot of other things based on people's history that they see in that painting. And so my painting is all, my niche is painting emotions, basically. Either painting emotions in the sense of a portrait, painting emotions in the sense of a company mission or values. Now, obviously, and I'm just starting on this, but it is a novel idea that I think has legs. And so I'm pursuing that.
Yeah, I have this saying from posters on the walls to conversations in the halls, and I think I can change that now from posters on the walls to paintings.
Paintings on the walls for conversation.
Well, the thing that I like about the connection with the first part of our conversation about the musical that was done, and talking about painting now, and the role of the arts
exactly.
the role of the arts in helping speak about the unspoken, unsurfacing the emotions and the feelings. And you were talking about becoming more emotionally capable, or feelings aware.
Right.
It's one thing on an individual level. What can a collective and an organization do around becoming more, what's the feeling behind this? What's the emotion behind this? What are things that they can do to do that safely within teams, within organizations?
Well, basically, they have that values conversation, which will lead to feelings, absolutely. So, what in this situation, what's the value we want to bring, and what are your feelings around it? Because the value that they talk about will be behind that will be all the feelings that are linked to that value. So just simply, making decisions collectively as a team by going, what value do we want to express in making this decision? Or and also doing the circle time, like I'm giving everybody the opportunity to express their feelings about whatever it is. These two things together are really helpful.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we sort of jumped ahead really quickly, but I'm just wondering if there was a moment in your career that was a pivot that really helped you to think differently about values, because obviously your understanding has changed as time has gone on, as more research that you've had and more data that you've collected. But can you tell us if there was whether there was a moment where there was a pivot, an aha moment around values?
Well, there are many, actually, but the main moment wasn't so much about values, it was about my sole intention. And I was a transportation engineer, very successful, working at the World Bank in my mid-40s. And I began to realize that up to that point, I'd loved my career. I'd been very successful, and then I totally realized I was bored with transportation. And I realized I was actually focused, what really interested me was transformation, personal transformation. So while at the World Bank, I wrote a book in my own time on A Guide to Liberating Your Soul. That very quickly led me to a second book, which is Liberating the Corporate Soul. And I realized that that's where my soul was leading me. And so that began my second career in my late 40s. And I completely switched from transportation to transformation. And that my last 25 years, and built up the Barrett Values Centre, the Barrett Academy. I've written 14 books. And then last May, my soul said to me, okay, forget the writing, which is what I've been focusing on for the past 15 years. I want you to start painting. Okay. Surrender to the soul. And I wasn't sure where I was going, but it's heading in the direction that I've been talking about. I still don't know fully where my soul is taking me, but the way forward is always to set an intention, never to set a goal. When people start talking about goals, I stop listening, because it's, again, I'm back to the word rubbish. Goals are rubbish. Goals are stressful. They don't help you. They don't tap into the energy of the universe. What does tap into the energy of the universe are intentions. I set my intention. So my intention last May was to become the best painter that I could possibly become. Not the best in the world, but the best I could become. And I just watched it, and I applied myself. I stopped writing. I've been doing some of that culture work, but not so much. And I've been really focusing on my painting. And within 10 months, I'm selling portrait painting. I'm selling my painting. And it's not about the selling. The only reason I sell my paintings is because my wife says we haven't got enough wall space. I've got to do something with these bloody paintings, so I sell them. It's not. I'm not trying to make a fortune by selling, and some of them I give away. Some I hand up to charity. But it's about, in some ways, selling a painting is a little bit like recognition. We all need a little bit of recognition, but I'm not that fussed about it. I do give my paintings away, and if somebody buys a painting, I often say, well, look, here's one of my older paintings. Pick whichever one you want, and you can have it. So my point is, surrender to the soul is the pathway to heaven. Surrender to the soul is the pathway to heaven, because you were born. Your soul was with you when you were born, and then the soul created the ego to navigate this three-dimensional material world. But the soul had reasons to be born, and the reason the soul is born is self-expression, connection, and contribution. Now, self-expression, we all have gifts and talents that the soul comes with, and the soul wants to express. When the fears of the ego get in the way of that, then you get ill, you get sick, and you get various diseases which block the full expression of your soul. So if you want to lead a long life, the vibrant life, you have to get in touch with your soul. Last week, I was 78 years old.
78 years young.
Yeah, well, whatever. I was 70. I had counted 78 years since the day I was born.
Yeah.
And I'm fully healthy and vibrant. On my third career. My mother lived to be 100. I probably hope to do that too. But the point is that you listen to your soul and you follow your soul. Then when you don't follow your soul, you will get sick.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you lots of examples of how people get sick, but we don't have time for that.
And I think we can easily think of them, even in our own lives. And you talk about this word surrender, and surrender. Your soul was telling you that give this up and be a painter. Are we talking about intuition, or are we talking about something much deeper?
No, the one beyond intuition is inspiration. Inspiration. There are 6 modes of decision making. The first mode of decision making is when we're born is instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And animals have instincts, and when we're born, we only have this reptilian mind brain, and it's all instinct, and the body keeps functioning because of instinct. Then comes subconscious beliefs. From the age 2 to 5 or 8, we learn to make decisions based on how to get our needs met in the environment. We can't control the environment because we're kids, but we learn how to be in that environment to get our needs met, and that will lead to subconscious beliefs. And then when we get to 8 or 9, the neocortex begins to develop, and we make conscious beliefs. And most people never get past that. Then comes values-based decision making. So after belief-based decision making, values-based. That's a huge leap, because beliefs are information from the past that you project into the future in order to make a decision. Well, as we know, everything's changing so rapidly, but pointless making decisions based on the past. So values-based decision making enables you to get past that. And after values-based decision making comes the one you mentioned, intuition. But now you're beginning to get in touch with the universal intelligence, and you have a problem, and you don't stop thinking that. Suddenly you wake up in the night and you've got the answer. Okay, so intuition is the answer to a particular problem. After intuition comes inspiration. Inspiration is the direct voice of the soul, and it's not just about solving a problem. It's about solving your life. It's about saving your life. And so inspiration tells you what the soul wants you to do. And you don't have a soul, you are the soul. So you listen to the inspiration and you follow it exactly. And, it's, and some people, well, how do I know? I said, just follow the breadcrumbs. What does that mean? Something called synchronicity. When things start happening and you look at the deeper meaning, and the soul is guiding you along the pathway that you need to take. And so synchronicity, an idea evolved from Carl Jung's work, a psychologist and a psychotherapist. So listening to the voice of your soul, you will encounter multiple levels of synchronicity. So you'll feel guided. It's like everything, if you want you to listen to the soul, every door opens. I mean, how do you become a successful artist in 10 months? Well, you can't do it on your own. I mean, I'm only just beginning, I've got a lot to learn, but I feel like, oh my God, I'm already selling my paintings. They must have some value. And the value that my paintings have is that they're emotion, they show emotion, they focus on emotions. That's my niche, to focus on emotions. And that's what my soul's asking me to do.
Mm.
So, how you make decisions is really important, but inspiration is about as high as you can go.
And I feel that what you're saying in all of this, that the greatest service that we can do for ourselves and the people that we're serving is to give ourselves the space to cultivate the readiness for those inspirations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
so that means flexibility. It means freedom from fear.
As a foundation, yeah, it's a wonderful loop that you've brought us back to, and I'm not sure if I was quite ready for the depth of this conversation, but I'm so
nobody ever is.
But I'm so glad that it's gone in the direction that it has, and I'm sure so many people are going to take benefit. And for me, listening back to it is a great joy. And one of my team members who's helping me with the editing is that she's saying that she's listening to these things again and again and again, and she can just feel them washing over her as she's, by the end of it, she feels like things are changing within her. So thank you, and thank you on behalf of everybody's listening to the shifts that your words will bring about in people. What's one piece of advice that's a movement piece of advice, an action for people who are interested in being more values-based, being more moving towards, I guess, this inspiration? What's one piece of advice you would like to leave people with?
Sign up for the Humanity Awareness Initiative by going to humanityawareness.com, and on that, that's the website. And on the front of that website, there's a link to a learning community, and inside that learning community are many of my e-learnings around all of these topics, and they're free.
Great. Well, thank you for your
www.humanityawareness.com, and from there go to the learning community. You'll find an abundance of materials about living a soul-driven life.
Thank you, Richard. And we'll put that into the show notes. Once again, thanks for your time. Thanks for your generosity of spirit, and can't wait to see more of your paintings.
Okay. All right. Well,
so you've got one to show us, Richard?
Yeah. Well, this is one I just finished a couple of weeks ago. I did a couple of others. Actually, they sold almost immediately, but this one is. You see, you look at this lady and it's not a portrait of a lady, it's a portrait of deep wisdom, of experience, of, there's more to it than just a portrait.
Yeah, it speaks volumes, and
Yeah, exactly.
And have you met this woman?
No, it's just I just surf the internet and look for interesting characters, and I usually look in the royalty-free photographs,
Yeah.
and I find these amazing photographs, and I think, like, oh, okay, I can change this, I can change that, and I can change the other, but essentially I capture the emotion.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your photo, and all the best with your painting, Richard.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Owl Insights, Working with Values. Please do subscribe to our Owl newsletter and follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. More information about today's speaker can be found in the show notes.